Tonight, many of you may have tucked your children in just a little tighter. Today's tragedy is nothing less than a nightmare for parents like me, like you, like our guest tonight, parent, therapist, and former teacher Trey Hill. Good evening.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I wish it were under better circumstances,
Same.
as we've talked about, but a lot of us now dealing with what we're watching. What about the people going through this? You're a dad. What does this make you think when you see all of this play out?
Well, obviously, as a father, as a former teacher, and now a mental health professional, you notice the emotions that show up. Obviously fear, sadness, and even just raw anger at the situation that's unfolded. And the important thing is to just remember that you're allowed to feel those things. The important thing is how you respond to them.
When people tuck their kids in, or when their kids start asking questions, when they start hearing about what had happened, what do we tell them? What do you tell your child? What do I tell my children?
For sure. I always encourage people to be honest with their kids. You know, if your kids are old enough and they're kind of paying attention, they're aware of what's going on, and they start asking questions, let them know that sometimes awful things happen, like what we saw today in Texas. Just because something awful happened there is no guarantee that it will happen close to home, but their feelings are valid. The emotions that they feel are valid, and they're allowed to feel those feelings. The cool thing is kids are pretty resilient. You know, they'll bounce back. They'll process those emotions a lot faster than you and I will. But yeah, just have those conversations, be honest with them.
For the folks there in Uvalde, what's next for those families? What do they need to do as far as their next steps go? Obviously,
you think about self-care. Self-care is a very important piece of this. We use this phrase, you know, in counseling all the time, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you are struggling yourself, take time for yourself physically. Make sure you're eating, make sure you're getting enough sleep, even in these troubling times and these hard times. Once you're taken care of physically, emotionally, checking in with yourself about your thoughts and feelings, then start tending to, you know, your young ones around you, friends and coworkers. You know, it's kind of like the airplane metaphor. If the thing comes down, put your mask on first, then help other people.
That's some great advice. And it's not just for people who have been through something like this. It's for anyone with dealing with any kind of tragedy, right?
For sure. Absolutely. The only real difference between a mass shooter event like this and, say, any other kind of tragedy is media coverage. And obviously it's important to stay informed. That's what WTVA is for. Paying attention to the 24-hour news cycle can overwhelm. It can cause more overwhelmed feelings. It can heighten anxiety. So the recommendation there is to take breaks. You know, you don't have to keep up with every waking moment. Check in, pay attention, and give yourself grace.
Yeah, I want to throw up some numbers
Sure.
on our screen. You mentioned these earlier tonight when you came in. Tell me these numbers, what they are, what we're looking at here.
Absolutely. So obviously, coming and talking to professionals like myself, other clinicians, that's important, but obviously it's a big step, and it can be kind of spooky, you know, coming to talk to somebody maybe for the first time. If that is, you know, a bridge too far, we have things like the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That's 1-800-273-8255. Those are professionals too. They're trained counselors. Even if you're not feeling fully suicidal, you can still have a conversation when you're experiencing those overwhelmed feelings. And if that's too much, there's actually the crisis text line at 741-741. Same deal, trained professionals. They'd be glad to talk to you.
Okay, and just real quickly, we want to thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Any final last words you have for anyone out there that may have a little bit of trouble dealing with something like this or anything else in their life?
It's like I say to my clients all the time, treat yourself with kindness. It's okay to experience what you've got going on, thoughts, feelings, memories, whatever it might be. But just take that moment to just be kind to yourself. Feelings are kind of like the weather. They will pass.
Yes, they will. And sometimes it's just okay to not be okay.
Absolutely.
Trey Hill, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Trey mentioned the weather. We want to toss it over to our chief meteorologist, Matt Lawpon, talking about our weather. We've had some changes over the course of the day. More rain on the way, Matt?
Yeah, I think we're talking